This is the brief on the latest episode of the Job Scam Report. So creator and writer Mark Anthony Dyson gathers a real zero-trust expert panel, Jay Jones the profiler, Ashley Price Horton, and Russ Irby, the HR honey badger, to break down the downright scary rise of AI fraud. First, the old John Cena test, actually trusting what you can see, is totally did. AI video is now so incredibly realistic that candidates might just be interviewing with a scripted AI avatar instead of a real human being. It's gotten to the point where entire professions like stunt work are literally facing total replacement by CGI. Second, companies are completely falling for the bait-and-wait scam. They think they're hiring everyday remote staff, but they're actually onboarding fake employees, often actors from North Korea, believe it or not. These fakes just use the job to gain long-term access to corporate infrastructure and financial accounts before they finally strike. Finally, we all need to be playing aggressive defense. If you get a suspected spam call, hang up immediately. Because if you keep talking, they can easily record you to clone your exact voice. You've also got to verify every single recruiter's email domain against real landing pages and keep a strict log of your applications so you can quickly spot fake follow-up emails.
Thank you very much for joining me on the Job Scam Report. This is Mark Anthony Dyson, your host. If you want to know more about me and want to know more about what I do here as the creator of the Job Scam Report, where I do podcasts, the videos, lots of articles, and there's an article usually accompanying everything that I do. Come on over. We're at markanthonydyson.substack.com. Hope that you'll join me there as I talk about job scams and what's happening these days. First of all, thank you for all those who subscribe and listen and read and watch every week, or somewhat every week. There's a lot of people who do come back and watch what is the latest in job scams. That's what I tend to talk about and report, and also provide some guidance in avoiding. But it's not just avoiding, it's also spotting them and also spotting the behavior that's behind them. I don't know if you've seen the recent consumer advice that the FTC put out on April 30th. You can look that up. There, they talk about, and it's close to what my first clip is in this. Michael Schumacher was a guest last fall on the Job Scam Report. And of course, he runs a company that is AI and security related. And I hope that you get a chance to go to see the whole video, or you can listen to the audio on either platform. But he recognizes and he knows job scams basically are run by social engineering, if we talked about in the past. And a lot of advice from what the FTC is given kind of plays into this, because really you have to be in the right spot in order to start engaging job scams when you get them via text or via email. And the way that fake recruiters operate, you got to look at how a lot of people think that they target them personally, which is not completely true. They target behavior, and they target what may be low-hanging fruit for them. And they write to those folks. They know people who are very vigilant and aware that any job lead could be a job scam. Even if it doesn't lead to a fake company, could lead to a fake opportunity given by a real company. Those two things could be true. But the latest scam that the FTC was putting out is it's not particularly clicking on a link. It's replying either yes or interested instead of clicking the link. Sometimes the link isn't even that very first piece of bait that you see. The trap is actually in the reply. Now, the FTC says some fake recruiters ask you to respond yes and interested. On the other hand, a real recruiter is much more forthright than that. And even though some of them, and if you ask 5 recruiters, you're going to get 5 different pieces of information. But before you start clicking or sending replies, you definitely want to research and start to look at, okay, is this opportunity really real? So as Michael it was beginning in this particular segment, he talks about if you are feeling distress and anxiety and depression, all those things, that you could be easy bait for them. Listen to this clip by Michael and listen to what he's saying about when you receive those messages that go out on LinkedIn, which everybody gets, but scammers are just looking for the few who will reply.
I don't even know what the job market should look like.
So they're driven larger in part by social engineering for the most part. Are there trigger words, the feelings that people have that like their stress, anxiety, depression, all those things? Perhaps they can seek that out too and target those who may be feeling that way or a group of people that might be feeling that way.
They can target that way. And a lot of times that interaction will start with a message that you receive. So you receive a message on LinkedIn, or a lot of text messages are going out now. I get text messages at least, no lie, 2 to 3 times a day from potential recruiters saying, or a bot telling me, I found your information on LinkedIn. It looks like you'd be a great fit for this position. Just click this link. And so if I respond to that message, or if I respond to a message that says, hi, how are you? And then they know that they have a live body on the other side and that they can probably interact and engage with me. And so to get the emotion and to understand the sentiment of how somebody's feeling, a lot of time that engagement starts with a message, and you'll receive a message that seems promising. You've been looking for work for a very long time, months, and you want desperately to hear back from somebody. You get a message that says, hey, I'd be a great fit for this amazing position that sounds really good. And so you start interacting and engaging, and you start revealing how you're feeling and where you're at in life, and revealing information that can be used really to harm you.
Right.
Recruiting love bombing is a thing. And a lot of people don't realize that it's damaging mostly to those who are positioned right for it. In other words, you're feeling sad, anxious, depressed, and feelings like that very often, you are losing hope. And honestly, the positions that offer hope are going to be very attractive. And particularly if they offer hope and compliments and flattery that isn't particularly warranted, that really don't know what you're like to work with or what your work product has produced over the years, they're giving you compliments, it's going to seem appealing, at least for 1 second. Now, the discerning mind is going to think, well, how would they know? Or what makes them think that I will qualify? In recruiting, love bombing is a thing. Fake recruiters or fake companies are going to try from different angles to get you engaged into a conversation of some sort. really is just a spiel. It's the right spiel to get you to go to the right place so that they start collecting. Let me change that. They've already started collecting your personal information, which they get from different places off the web and scraped off of social media and gotten from other lists that people who have, they buy from each other. They buy lists from each other, and there's certain information they can get to build a profile on you. And very often, as I've stated before, it's been measured that perhaps most scammers would have access to 98% of information about you over a period of time. And scamming's not just a hot flash in the pan. As we talked about in the podcasts and other places and articles I've written about bait and wait, it takes a while for them to get to the point to where they have enough information to start using your personal information. So don't think of this one time as they didn't get this much information. They only got the critical part, which is what a lot of them, that's all they need, is just one little part. So recruiting, love bombing in recruitment is very successful, and they'll keep trying as we can continue in this discussion in this clip coming up. This clip I'm talking about is when Jay Jones, one of my co-hosts on the Job Scam Report, did a LinkedIn Live with 3 fairly known career service providers, Jessica Hernandez, Aaron Kennedy, Melissa Cohen. And Jay uses the word recruiting love bomb. By the way, was the first time I heard it was from Jay on one of our episodes. But for sure, he is referring to this behavior of making the candidate feel comfortable enough and urging them to act based on the fact that they meet those qualifications, which is something that if you've been, again, you're stressed, you feel the anxiety, you feel the depression, you feel like you may need therapy after all has been said and sung. The last part, I can't speak for everyone, but it happens, and it gets you intrigued. And intrigue is all you need as a key to the basement floor of this recruitment fraud that's going on, and that's quite, how should I say it, spreading like gangrene these days. Here's the clip.
The other thing is look at the standard messaging that they use. If you see the word kindly, if you see a lot of him dashes, if you see a lot of emojis thrown in, if you see a lot of introductory messaging that basically is overly flattering, because I talked about this a while ago where I call them the recruiting love bombers, because they'll come in really fast and be like, hey, you're wonderful. I can't believe like you're out here in this job market. You're like, I can't believe it either. And so you're like, yeah, agree with you. And so you start to listen to them. And by then, if all they need to do is earn your trust for a split second, and they got your resume. But to recap it, watch out for the immediate responses once you use the open to work banner. If you make any posts and you see these comments saying, hey, go to this Gmail account, go to this Outlook account, it's a scam.
I really want to talk about that one for a second, because that's what happened to me, right? A scammer was not even on LinkedIn. And she had the audacity when she was asked for her LinkedIn profile to say, oh, I had to shut it down due to fraudulent activity.
Yeah. They build in excuses, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, what was happening with my scammer is these, just like you were saying, Jay, these double named people, right? Joe John, Steve Harvey, Chris Paul. They would find posts that have a lot of traction and a lot of engagement on them. And they would look for anybody who had the open to work banner specifically, or who said that they were looking for a job. And they would say, oh, you should reach out to Melissa Cohen. She's a wonderful recruiter. She helped 2 of my friends get outstanding roles. Here's her email. So be really wary of something like that. There is no good job search coach that I can imagine that you have to go off of LinkedIn to communicate with initially, right? Of course, it's going to move off of LinkedIn at some point. But if your initial point of contact is some random Gmail, it's very likely a scam. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the times I've seen these comments and emails from recruiters, I've only seen one legitimate recruiter actually use a Gmail address, only one. And then you have to think about it as a job seeker. There are thousands of people who are applying the roles. Everybody is clamoring to be at the top of the pile, be the first to respond to a job posting. So why would a recruiter put their personal email out so they can be blasted by all these people? And it just doesn't make any sense. And so going back to this not so confidential job posting. So the purpose of confidential, I explained before, is to discreetly hire people and keep the stability of the company intact. But if you go to Confidential Careers website, they had this role for HR Director Robert Half. Now, if it's supposed to be confidential, then why do I see Robert Half here? Why do you see Robert Half? And then if you go to Robert Half's website, they have the same role, HR Director. I believe it was filled now. But there's no reason to go to Confidential Careers and click apply now, give your name, your first letter, your email, and then your resume. But then it's on Robert Half's website directly. Just go straight to Robert Half. The issue here is that you had your data harvested because they insert themselves into the process and they're job scraping and being middlemen to collect your information and then sell it down the line.
Debbie Marshall asked in the comments, does working only with profiles that have the certified, I think she means verified check mark, help, or do fake profiles have that check mark too? I think she's talking about the verified check mark you get when you verify your government ID.
Yeah, it improves your odds, but what I've seen over the past 4 to 5 months is a ton of verified profiles that were hacked. So they have the check mark, they have premium, but they're entirely hacked profiles of people that were either inactive. And the timeline that I see these scammers take advantage of is if you're inactive maybe 3 weeks or more, then you're a viable target to hijack. And it's insane, but there are tells with that because you can see the nomin history, you can see the chart pivot in career history. So let's say, Melissa, you work as a forklift operator, but then suddenly you're out here trying to get people hired, trying to get their resumes. It makes no sense to make this big of a pivot suddenly. And so those are some tells. But like I said, I've seen easily over 300 just with Deloitte itself. There were over 300 profiles that pretended to be human resources business partners, and they were trying to recruit people to Deloitte. But the problem was they're all fake or checking out when it comes to your work search is you can go to who.is. And when you do that, you can put the domain in there. And then it'll tell you the history of the domain registrants. So for here, Confidential Careers, that it's redacted for privacy.
In this last clip, this is from the event that myself, Ashley, and Jay did for the Alumni Intel Group. They are a group of former Intel employers of Intel. You've seen the commercial 1,000 times. It's a pretty big group from what I understand, but we got a chance to speak to their group about what we've seen on LinkedIn as well as other places about job scams. Again, Jay brings up the recruiting love bombing that often happens, but really people most susceptible to it are, we talked about the emotions, but the other thing scammers have been able to do, they've been able to communicate their urgency and get people to act fast and not to think a second time about their actions. And that's very easy to do when you're in a spot where you've been spraying and praying your resume all over the place. You're also feeling the layoff PTSD. actually happens. And although and I mentioned before, there's not many studies on it, it's a real feeling, especially if you've been laid off 2 or 3 different times. It's not a whole lot different than the PTSD you feel from other trauma, where you feel like there's abuse or there's been an attack, or forces and circumstances minimizing your existence, not hearing you, not feeling you, and not responding to you. You're used to because you're applying to jobs aren't responding to you. You're feeling people aren't hearing you. And when you say you need some help, you need some answers, you need some direction, and nobody's not giving. It's a very lonely process, and people don't want to feel the way again. So when they're faced with the layoff, it begins. When the company makes that 30-day announcement, you automatically say, oh, not again. I don't want to be a part of this again. And you've been so involved in your work, you didn't get a chance to look around to see. And in fact, you might have been told things are going really well and only to get laid off not too shortly after. So it's a very real thing. And I'm going to end with this. I'm going to end with the clip for the show. And thank you very much for listening. But all that to say is all of us will need to be on guard and protect our mental spaces, even if we're employed. If we're employed, it's time to start thinking about what things are going to look like if you had a 30-day notice right now, today, no matter where you are. I think their entrepreneurs have that right kind of mindset. Things can happen at a moment, and they spend time preparing their finances, their resources to be able to make another move should their business fall down. I think that every job seeker needs to have an exit plan even when you're employed. So you don't get caught up or you don't get caught by being in an unemployment desert for a long period of time. And it's hard to come out of that hole. It's very difficult. But I hope this will serve as education so that you could turn around your mindset in this. As this clip is specifically, again, as we're talking about it to the group, there people are intrigued about how prevalent they are. Job scams, and talking about job scams and the behavior of job scammers, as we talk shortly in this clip. I just want to be sure that you are on guard at all times. And should you have any questions about anything job scam related, feel free to reach out to me on Substack or on LinkedIn. Look under Mark Anthony Dyson. As I always say, clarify, verify, don't just apply. Today's modern job search requires you to search not only more strategically and safely. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time as we bow out with this clip.
The other thing is look at the standard messaging that they use. If you see the word kindly, if you see a lot of him dashes, if you see a lot of emojis thrown in, if you see a lot of introductory messaging that basically is overly flattering, because I talked about this a while ago where I call them the recruiting love bombers because they'll come in really fast. They'll be like, hey, you're wonderful. I can't believe you're out here in this job market. You're like, I can't believe it either. And so you're like, yeah, agree with you. And so you start to listen to them. And by then, if all they need to do is earn your trust for a split second and they got your resume. But to recap it, watch out for the immediate responses once you use the open to work banner. If you make any posts and you see these comments saying, hey, go to this Gmail account, go to this Outlook account, it's a scam.
I really want to talk about that one for a second because that's what happened to me, right? A scammer was not even on LinkedIn. And she had the audacity when she was asked for her LinkedIn profile to say, oh, I had to shut it down due to fraudulent activity.
Yeah. They build in excuses, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, what was happening with my scammer is these, just like you were saying, Jay, these double named people, right? Joe John, Steve Harvey, Chris Paul. They would find posts that have a lot of traction and a lot of engagement on them. And they would look for anybody who had the open to work banner specifically, or who said that they were looking for a job. And they would say, oh, you should reach out to Melissa Cohen. She's a wonderful recruiter. She helped two of my friends get outstanding roles. Here's her email. So be really wary of something like that. There is no good job search coach that I can imagine that you have to go off of LinkedIn to communicate with initially, right? Of course, it's going to move off of LinkedIn at some point. But if your initial point of contact is some random Gmail, it's very likely a scam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the times I've seen these comments and emails from recruiters, I've only seen one legitimate recruiter actually use a Gmail address, only one. And then you have to think about it as a job seeker. There are thousands of people who are applying the roles. Everybody's clamoring to be at the top of the pile, be the first to respond to a job posting. So why would a recruiter put their personal email out so they can be blasted by all these people? And it just doesn't make any sense. And so going back to this not so confidential job posting. So the purpose of confidential, I explained before, is to discreetly hire people and keep the stability of the company intact. But if you go to Confidential Careers website, they had this role for HR director Robert Half. Now, if it's supposed to be confidential, then why do I see Robert Half here? Why do you see Robert Half? And then if you go to Robert Half's website, they have the same role, HR director. I believe it was filled now. But there's no reason to go to Confidential Careers and click apply now, give your name, your first letter, your email, and then your resume. But then it's on Robert Half's website directly. Just go straight to Robert Half. The issue here is that you had your data harvested because they insert themselves into the process and they're job scraping and being middlemen to collect your information and then sell it down the line.
Debbie Marshall asked in the comments, does working only with profiles that have the certified, I think she means verified check mark, help, or do fake profiles have that check mark too? I think she's talking about the verified check mark you get when you verify your government ID.
Yeah, it improves your odds, but what I've seen over the past 4 to 5 months is a ton of verified profiles that were hacked. So they have the check mark, they have premium, but they're entirely hacked profiles of people that were either inactive. And the timeline that I see these scammers take advantage of is if you're inactive maybe 3 weeks or more, then you're a viable target to hijack. And
Wow.
it's insane, but there are tells with that because you can see the nominal history. You can see the chart pivot in career history. So let's say, Melissa, you work as a forklift operator, but then suddenly you're out here trying to get people hired, trying to get their resumes. It makes no sense to make this big of a pivot suddenly. And so those are some tells. But like I said, I've seen easily over 300 just with Deloitte itself. There were over 300 profiles that pretended to be human resources business partners, and they were trying to recruit people to Deloitte. But the problem was they're all fake or checking out when it comes to your word search is you can go to who.is. And when you do that, you can put the domain in there. And then it'll tell you the history of the domain registrants. So for here, Confidential Careers, that it's redacted for privacy.